ID Mat is a really useful 3D channel effect. We can use ID Mat to isolate pieces of our 3D scene based on their object ID. Object ID is something that needs to be set up in your 3D program. So let's say, for example, in 3ds Max, you would go to the object's properties, and under the gbuffer area, you would change the object's ID. So let's apply ID Mat here. At first, it just kind of basically knocks everything out. That's okay. And basically what you need to do is change the ID selection to something besides 0. As you can see here, nothing in our scene has an object ID of 0. So I'm going to take this, say, for example, to 1. And this car in the back has an object ID of 1. If we go to 2, we see the car in front. So if we wanted to take this car and put it in a different scene, and maybe we wanted to make a commercial for whatever the movie is we're doing in 3D or whatever, we could take individual pieces and elements from this and use them in a different way. So we could put maybe motion graphics behind this, like fractal noise or something, or whatever else we wanted to do with this car. Maybe we wanted to take the scene, the environment. If I change the ID selection to 3, the garage and the floor of the garage have been given the object ID of 3. So if we wanted to put something else in this garage, we can do that. We could also use Photoshop's painting tools to clone out some of these areas and basically restore some of this scene so that we can put other elements in this 3D environment here. Now I'm going to go back to the car here. I believe that was at 2. There we go. You'll notice that we get these yucky things we've been talking about in this whole chapter, these yucky aliased edges. Let me zoom in on that. It's just kind of like the nature of the beast, but ID Mat actually has a few features that will allow us to kind of mitigate the ugliness of that stuff. First of all, we can feather this, which kind of softens the edge up nicely. Also, one of the big ones is that we can use coverage. And if we turn this on, it does something I don't like. It basically puts black outlines around each object. However, it does get rid of that ugliness around the edges. So maybe if you had like a 3D Blackbird or something like that, then you could turn on use coverage and those lines wouldn't be so noticeable. Here, I'm not really digging the effect too much. It makes it look too cartoony or techy or something. So I'm going to take that off, and we could basically just play with the feather. Now, be careful again, too. If you increase the feather too much, it starts looking kind of like an outer glow or like a really bad Photoshop selection. When we talk about the simple choker effect, you can use the simple choker to kind of get rid of a little bit of haloing and fringing around objects like this. Now, before we leave, one of the auxiliary channels here you can also select as Material ID. This file is not set up with Material IDs, so it's not looking super awesome. But if I had set that up in the 3D program with Material IDs, then we could also select and control things and mat out objects by the Material ID. So if I had a character and his pants had a different Material ID than his shirt, even though it's really just one object in my 3D program, then we could like mat out his pants, which is a really humorous expression that I've never heard myself say before. But short of matting out pants, this can be very effective for choosing which parts of a single object we want to get rid of. Maybe I wanted to just isolate this door. I could put a different Material ID on the door so that I could mat it out in After Effects if I wanted to. And again, don't forget, like other effects, if I change this to Object ID here and I click on an object, or maybe if I turn off the effect but leave it selected, then I could click on these different objects and the info panel will tell me the different object IDs of the different objects that I'm clicking on. So I don't have to just sit there and guess and keep scrolling through the ID selection a million times until I find the actual object ID of what I'm looking for. And that's ID Mat.